This is legitimately scary shit. Okay, I can't begin to explain to you what kind of downstream consequences this will have. This is the Brooks Brothers riot that helped make George W. Bush president. Some of the people involved in this were, a lot of the people involved in this were obviously Republican Party operatives. Some of the people involved in this became, Brett Kavanaugh, a part of the United States Supreme Court. Actually, you know what? Let's do a deeper dive into this.
Every 4 years, Americans across this great nation put our differences aside to join hands and collectively lose our fucking minds over the presidential election.
Turn out for what? We singing Trump, Trump. They're eating the dogs.
Now, we've seen some pretty crazy stuff in recent years, but if you're thinking 2020 was the most hog-wild election in modern history, you have absolutely got to hear about what went down in the year 2000. Because if you're some kind of Rizless Gen Z damn Danieling sheesh lord, you may be surprised to hear that in the year 2000, there was a literal and verifiable stolen presidential election. And even if you're over the age of 30 and maybe remember hearing something about hanging chads and Florida recounts, the details are certifiably insane. And if nothing else, it's good to just remind ourselves of the fragility of elections in the United States and why your vote, yes, I'm talking to you, really does matter in shaping the next 4 years. And hell, I'll say it, I'm crazy, maybe even beyond. Hi, I'm Raleigh Williams, a guy with a climate science and policy degree and a raging obsession with an election that happened almost a quarter of a century ago. And this is a video about stealing a presidential election. Welcome to Climate Town.
Yeah. A lot of people, especially younger people, are not familiar with the 2000 elections where the Republicans actually successfully stole the election. They lost the general vote. They lost the popular vote. The only way that they were able to win the state of Florida was because George W. Bush's brother, Jeb Bush, was the literal fucking governor, and the right-wing Supreme Court at the time allowed them to steal this election.
That's right. Both the Florida governor and the Secretary of State in charge of maintaining the integrity of the election had actively campaigned for George Bush.
And they successfully intercepted the recount process by starting what is known as the Brooks Brothers riot. This was carefully crafted and conducted by Roger Stone and many Republican staffers, including but not limited to Amy Covid Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh.
In the year 1999, a significant portion of the country genuinely believed that when the date rolled over from 99 to 00, all of our computers would self-destruct, launch the nukes, and destroy America's economy. It was called Y2K, and it was a dumb thing to be afraid of, but in their defense, in 1999, computers looked like this. But the new year came and went, and with Y2K safely in the rearview mirror, Americans could focus on the two things that really mattered. The hit single Who Let the Dogs Out by the Baha Men,
Who let the dogs out?
and the 2000 presidential election.
Choose your character.
In the blue corner was Al Gore. He cut his teeth as a Democratic senator from Tennessee before becoming vice president to a saxophone-toting, sexual relations with that woman-denying president by the name of Bill Clinton. Gore released a best-selling book about global warming and the environment back here in 1992. He released the award-winning documentary An Inconvenient Truth that supercharged climate change awareness here in 2006. But here in 2000, he's running for president.
This is actually one of your worst takes. I watched this happen. The Gore campaign only ever sought selective recounts, and the only way he'd actually win is by admitting votes that weren't legal. Yeah, the problem that occurred. I mean, he'll go into it, and you'll see what happened. The problem in this situation is that very obviously, like, an insane amount of votes were directly falsified. Okay. an insane amount of votes were very clearly an insane amount of votes very clearly went to candidates that they were not supposed to go to as a consequence of butterfly ballots and hanging chads.
I announce that I am a candidate for president.
I'm sure he will describe it.
And in the red corner is George W. Bush. Not to be confused with his father and the president from 8 years earlier, George H.W. Bush. George Regular W. Bush was a Texas oil man who founded an oil and gas exploration firm, then became the co-owner of the Texas Rangers, and then became the governor of Texas. And in the year 2000, he's the Republican candidate for president.
We will renew America's purpose.
It's Gore versus Bush. It's Climate Guy versus Texas Oil Man. It's election 2000, and it's right now. And if you're wondering why they're all so focused on a big map.
Yeah, don't forget the Florida Secretary of State Katherine Harris was the co-chair of Bush's election commission. She literally was the decision to call Florida on election night and not restart it until the Florida Supreme Court told her to resume counting.
It's because America doesn't have a simple democratic election where the candidate with the most votes wins. We have the much stupider electoral college, where states are assigned point values and each candidate tries to win the highest stakes board game on earth. And that means close elections can often come down to just a couple of states that could swing either way. But remember, this is also a TV show, which means networks are foaming at the mouth to call states as early and often as they can, filling up the map and making politics feel like Wheel of Fortune.
George Bush, he carries his home state of Texas.
Washington State goes for Gore.
Sarah, you hit the jackpot with $1 billion.
And then, at 7:49 p.m. Eastern Time, NBC felt they asked enough Floridians exiting the polls who they voted for, and they were ready to make the call.
So sorry to interrupt you. Mike, you know I wouldn't do this if it weren't big. Florida goes for Al Gore.
It was massive. Florida had 25 electoral votes, and if Gore took it, the Bush path to victory looked rail thin. The other networks followed suit, and it seemed like a wrap then and there. Except it wasn't a wrap, because as actual voting data replaced exit polling data, Gore's lead began to shrink. And something positively weird was going on because Florida polling stations were inundated with voters calling to say they were confused about the ballot and they were worried that their vote might have gone to the wrong person. Curious! Then, 2 hours later at 9:55 p.m.,
NBC News is now taking Florida out of Vice President Gore's.
And the reason for why they did that, was because, fuck, I can't find it. God damn it. I fucked it up. I was going to do a great segue to, oh my God, I will vote. And I fucked it up. I couldn't link it fast enough. God damn it. Bro had a stroke. No. Wash streamer. I know. Please subscribe to me. I'm a wash streamer. This is why they did it.
And together we will make America great again.
Yo voy a votar por Donald Trump. Ay, 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 por Dios. Yo voy a votar por Donald Trump. This is how it happened. This is the story. Okay. I'm not running ads. My contract's over with Amazon, with Twitch. So I'm not running ads, but in the future, if I decide to run ads again, you might want to subscribe to avoid those ads. Or if you want to send me links and things of that nature, including Yo voy a votar por Donald Trump. Twitch Prime is free. Also, yeah, links like this. Exactly. Links like this. Twitch Prime is free, folks. Or you can subscribe for $6, or you can get gifted a sub if you're lucky. Let's continue.
Column and putting it back in the too close to call column.
As the other states fell into place, only Florida was left undecided.
Thank you, Bowl,
which means
for the 10
whoever
gifted
won
subs.
Florida would win the election. Then at 2:16 a.m., roughly 6 hours past their target demo's bedtime,
Fox News now projects George W. Bush, the winner in Florida, and thus it appears the winner of the presidency of the United States.
The other networks followed suit, and Al Gore
No, I see every message, including this one.
was left sitting in a hotel room staring at every major news network in the country, telling him he had lost an election that all the exit polling data said he had won. So Al Gore picked up the phone, called Bush to concede, and then left to go deliver the official concession speech. The thing is,
Hasan surplus value,
Al
thank
Gore
you.
had not lost the presidential election. Yeah, and he would have known that if he had thought to call his own numbers guy, Michael Hooley, who was keeping careful track of the Florida vote.
He said, we're at the War Memorial, and I asked why, and he said, we're about to concede. And I said, for what? We haven't lost.
The whole thing was a clusterfuck in a number of ways, but most importantly, it was so close that it had automatically triggered Florida Election Code 102.141, legally requiring an automatic recount of all the votes in the state. This election was not over. But Al Gore didn't know that, and was literally walking to the stage to concede the election when his senior advisor David Morehouse ran his ass down and stopped him. The drama. Imagine that moment. I wish I had a clip of it. I don't, but I super wish I did. Luckily, HBO made a made-for-TV movie about the 2000 election, and it did include this goofy-ass reenactment.
No, Mr. Vice President! Mr. Vice President! Mr. Vice President! I'm good. Mr. Vice President? Mr. Vice President? Sir?
I'm not going to keep
Please,
him waiting.
please, Mr. Vice President. There's a problem with the numbers in Florida.
That's amazing.
And then, in the most awkward phone call of his entire life, Gore called Bush back to unconcede. As you can imagine, Bush was pretty fucking pissed. The conversation got heated, and Gore apparently ended the call with something to the effect of, "I don't care what your little brother says, this isn't over." And that's a pretty badass thing to say. It's also a little confusing, but in this case it makes perfect sense because George Bush's little brother is Jeb Bush. And in the year 2000, Jeb Bush was the governor of Florida.
Uh-oh.
I told my brother that we were going to carry Florida for him. Is that going to be a truthful statement?
Uh-oh.
It better be.
So the race...
Jeb! It's fucking Jeb! It's Jeb time!
Moved to the Sunshine State, where the 5.8 million votes cast in
Please
Florida
clap.
would be machine recounted to see if Bush's 1,784 vote lead would hold. And as the computers rescanned the votes, Bush's lead steadily shrank down to just 327 votes. But that's not all. There were an additional 171,000 ballots that the machines had just skipped because either they couldn't read any vote or they read multiple votes. Which makes sense if you remember the many calls on election day about confusing ballots and defective equipment. These are the same computers that we thought might fire nuclear weapons at Russia if they weren't sure what year it was. Good thing Florida state law says we'll take these 171,000 ballots and recount them by hand, right?
Florida law, and the law in many other states, calls for a careful check by real people of the machine results in elections like this one.
But Team Bush had a slightly different take. They wanted to not count any more votes.
Yeah, they did a stop the count. Now, some of you probably remember when they did that exact same thing in the 2020 election. It was additionally funny, however, because on some states they were saying stop the count. In others, they were saying count the votes. It was very confusing. But that didn't stop Republicans from advocating for whichever position suited their purpose. Now, the little problem that the Republicans had during the 2020 election is that, well, the Democrats were winning. Okay? It's a lot harder to stop the actual normal process when the votes are still being counted. I don't know if they'll stop. I don't know if that is going to stop the Republicans from trying to stop this process this time around, but it's definitely a harder thing to do versus, oh no, the votes have been counted, it's over, you lost.
And declared George Bush president immediately. And in situations like this, you'd hope there'd be someone to step in and say, get f***ed, we're counting all the votes. I'd even settle for a simple, Sorry, but counting votes is how democracy worked. And that person should have been Florida Secretary of State Katherine Harris. Now, in a wild coincidence, the co-chair of George Bush's Florida presidential campaign was also a woman named Katherine Harris, and in an even wilder coincidence, it was the same person. That's right, both the Florida governor and the Secretary of State in charge of maintaining the integrity of the election had actively campaigned for George Bush, which is a really hard position to be in if you're Al Gore. Luckily, he did have one thing going for him. He got more votes in.
I will say something that might come across as controversial, but I think the state of politics now is even worse than that. Like somehow where there's a direct conflict of interest there. But I think right now the state of politics is even worse than that, where like Donald Trump has put his loyalists in every fucking position within the Republican Party. And now there is even a greater partisan split, and it doesn't fucking matter. Like you don't even have to be related to Donald Trump at all. Okay, you can just openly be like, I'm an insane person, and I think the elections were stolen last time, and now I'm in charge. I'm tasked with like, I'm tasked with the election here. I'm gonna be doing, I'm gonna be sitting and doing the fucking counting myself personally.
Florida than George Bush did. That's right. We now know for sure that Gore got more votes in Florida than Bush. By kind of a lot. Unfortunately, some serious problems with Florida's voting system invalidated literally thousands of ballots that would have gone for Gore. People, this election is a mess. First off, thousands of voters across the whole state of Florida showed up to the polls and found they're not allowed to vote. That's right, newly elected governor and longtime little brother Jeb Bush oversaw a purge of the voter rolls.
Interestingly, this strategy, and this is the reason why I've always maintained the position that Donald Trump was not unique in the way that he said that, like, illegals are voting or whatever the fuck. This strategy has always been in place. This strategy was first originally advocated for by Paul Weyrich of the Moral Majority. Okay, this is a ultra-Christian evangelical group that originally created the massively consequential evangelical base of support for the Republican Party. Paul Weyrich very openly used to say, a lot of you have goo goo gaga government syndrome. Many of you think everyone should go out and vote. You're stupid. Our goal is to stop people from going out to vote because, we don't want certain people to go out and vote. This is straight up the play. They've always been. Oh, here it is. Goo goo government syndrome. In 1980, Paul Weyrich, the founding father of the conservative movement, addressed a seminal religious right gathering here in Dallas, or held in Dallas in the fall of 1980.
Have what I call the goo goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
Yep. Who's this? That's Paul Weyrich. He's a real fucking demon. One of the worst demons in a sea of other incredibly consequential demons in American politics. He is the godfather of the modern conservative movement, I would say. A Catholic man himself who recognized that the evangelical base of support was just waiting to be activated. Anyway, so why would he self-report that unprompted? Why not? He was successful. He has been successful. You are watching how successful he is. These people don't care. They run this shit. Now, one thing you have to understand is that like, in order for Republicans to get away with voter suppression in the form of adding unnecessary hurdles to how people vote, whether it be voter ID initiatives, whether it be purging people from the voter rolls, voter registry, there needs to be a reason for that, right? You can't just be like, nah, we got to purge people from the voter rolls. You'd be like, that seems like a strange thing. Why is the question that comes to mind. And the answer to the why is illegals voting. Okay? Republicans have consistently lied about voter fraud in an effort to do election fraud or voter suppression. There is no evidence to show that there is a tremendous number of illegal voters out there. And as a matter of fact, there's only evidence to show that this does not happen. Okay? It is so marginal that it is statistically insignificant. Republicans have tried to prove that there is mass voter fraud happening. Illegals are coming in and they're voting for the Democratic Party over and over and over again. That has never been the reality. As a matter of fact, the reality is the exact opposite. That does not happen. Every single time they have set forth election committees, election integrity committees, including but not limited to Donald Trump, who also did this, bipartisan committees tasked with looking at election integrity, and George W. Bush himself did this as well. They have always found that there is no voter fraud. There is virtually 0.001% voter fraud occurring, and that is so statistically irrelevant that it would be ridiculous to say that this is happening en masse. Having said that, however, Donald Trump greatly expanded on that messaging and followed it to its logical conclusion that it definitely is happening, and it's definitely happened this time around. It happened the last election cycle. It's always happening. So I'm just not going to agree to the results of the election. Okay? And they're gearing up for that already. Donald Trump has, this time around, in this election cycle, said, elections are about who has a better legal team. Republican National Committee is now suing the city of Milwaukee over observer access to early voting polling places, access on election day. And they've already started. And they're not going to stop, just so you understand. But anyway, even the quote-unquote normal Republican Party has engaged in this exact same method and this exact same sentiment that Donald Trump expanded on, okay, followed to its logical conclusion on, which is why I fucking hate the Republican Party. One of the many different reasons why I hate the Republican Party and why I hate Democrats who say, we want a normal Republican Party. We want a strong Republican Party. Bitch, this is what their strong and normal Republican Party was fucking doing. Let's continue.
That accidentally included a lot of legal voters who overwhelmingly voted Democratic.
He looked at the roll and he looked at me and he said, we have a problem. You're not on the roll.
Sorry about that. Now, down here in Palm Beach County, they used a ballot with such bad graphic design that thousands of Democratic Jewish voters accidentally voted for the alt-right anti-Semitic candidate Pat Buchanan.
The Democrats were listed second. I punched the second hole, and that second hole was for Pat Buchanan.
And this is not just like my opinion, man.
Yeah.
Here's Pat Buchanan himself.
If the two candidates they pushed were Buchanan and Gore, almost certainly those are Al Gore's votes and not mine.
And as if printing your ballots on a bunch of goddamn origami cranes isn't bad enough, voters up here in Duval County were instructed to vote on every page of their ballot. But anyone who followed those instructions had their vote invalidated because there were 2 pages of presidential candidates. And these aren't just like a couple of votes. In Florida, there was a vote for Gore on 84,000 of these invalid multi-vote ballots compared to just 37,000 multi-vote ballots that included Bush. But the Bush legal team was prepared to swear on their mother's lives that a bunch of elderly Jewish Democrats had voted alt-right and that the multi-vote ballot...
Like voted for an anti-Semite, like an open anti-Semite.
were uncountable because technically there's no way to tell for sure.
By the way, that right there is another like change in attitude where you had an overt anti-Semite go on television and be like, yeah, these Jews did not vote for me. Okay. Can you imagine like a Richard Spencer type saying some shit like that now? Fuck no. Absolutely not. Okay. Like that guy was the OG alt-right guy. Now the alt-right is packaged directly under the MAGA banner. It's just not like a thing. That's not like, can you imagine a Nick Fuentes type person saying that shit now? Fuck no. Absolutely not.
Sure who the voter was trying to vote for. Not even if the candidates were Al Gore and also popular write-in candidate Al Gore.
You want to be ideologically pure, or do you want to win?
Demon.
They said we want to win.
And under the time pressure, there seemed to be no practical way for the Gore legal team to contest any of those multi-votes, the accidental Buchanan votes, or the purged votes. That's thousands of votes flushed away, man. But wait, because there was a ballot issue that they could go after. In some counties, voters have to punch out little paper circles known as chads. It sounds simple, but sometimes that chad hangs on for dear life. And other times, that chad receptacle fills up so goddamn full that you can't punch yours out at all. Now you got yourself one of the thousands of pregnant or dimpled chad ballots that never got counted. But since these chad-stricken no votes could indicate just one candidate, the Gore team set their sights on hand recounting ballots with pregnant or dimpled or swinging chads, and in doing so, ushered in a dynasty of just the absolute hackiest talk show jokes.
I had to go to the doctor today. You know why? I have a hanging chad.
And so the entire 2000 presidential election basically came down to 61,000 ballots in Florida that machines thought were blank. Would they be counted or would they be thrown away? We'll find out next time. Just kidding, let's find out right now. The Gore team struck first by requesting recounts in just 4 heavily Democratic counties where they thought they'd uncover a boatload of dimpled and hanging chad ballots with Al Gore's name all over them. The Bush team immediately sues to stop the hand recounts on the grounds that Gore was selecting favorable counties. Gore counters in a televised address.
I am also prepared, if Governor Bush prefers, to include in this recount all the counties in the entire state of Florida.
Bush ignores the offer and doubles down on the lawsuit to stop the 4 recounts, but loses the case and the recounts are a go. Point Gore. But the Bush bench is deep. They had to let the recount start, but no one said they had to let it finish. So Secretary of State and Team Bush MVP Katherine Harris tightened the recount deadline, and Republicans worked to slow down the actual vote counting itself. They argued over every vote.
Vote for 6 Republican Party challenges.
4 more votes for Gore. Election Supervisor Jane Carroll, a Republican, voted against this count.
They had to shut down the counting temporarily because the canvassing board members had to run to court to go appear before the judge to talk about whether or not we were eating chads.
Katherine Harris then attempted to stop the entire hand recount early.
I've decided it is my duty under Florida law to exercise my discretion in denying these requested amendments.
But was denied by the Florida Supreme Court. Undeterred, Katherine Harris follows up by stating she won't accept any recounts unless they're completely finished in the next 3 days. The Gore legal team says, hey, you can't do that, and the Florida
She's in jail, right? What? No, she was elected shortly after this.
Supreme Court steps in and says, stop f***ing around, and gives them a week to do the recount. There was only one question left on everybody's mind.
Who let the dogs out?
Sorry, no. Who would win this election? With the recount in full swing, things looked very good for Gore. He picked up 93 new votes and
virtually every single person that was involved in this process was elevated through the ranks of the Republican Party. Like almost every single one, including but not limited to 2 Supreme Court justices that Donald Trump put in the Supreme Court. Okay? Roger Stone was the one who implemented the Brooks Brothers riot, big Trump loyalist, as you guys know. He is like seen as a hatchet man and is seen as like a deeply unserious person in general now. But like every single person was like directly directly elevated through the ranks of the Republican Party for their loyal servitude.
In Volusia County, and if their projections were right, Gore would win another 300 to 400 votes in Palm Beach, another 100 in Miami-Dade, and up to 500 in Broward County. Even on the low side, that would be enough to put Al Gore right back on top. Pretty good news for the
remember how close this election is, okay? Remember how close this election is. Like, they literally, you lost your chance at a free sub? Wait, why? I'll always take it. Like, not only did Al Gore already win the popular vote, he would have won Florida as well if the recount process took place in the way that it was supposed to. And they were like, nope, not happening.
Democrats. The Republicans, on the other hand, weren't about to let a lead slip away. They devised a new method to ensure none of those votes got counted. In Miami-Dade, a young Roger Stone had teamed up with other Republican operatives, and while the hand recount was happening on the 18th floor of the Clark Center building, a horde of what appeared to be angry Floridian protesters stormed the building. Stop the count, stop the fraud. An instant classic. This horde of men in suits banging on windows and attempting to
stop the count, stop the fraud.
Disrupt an American presidential election would become known as the Brooks Brothers Riot, after one of Gore's lawyers was chased down and harassed for the crime of having a sample ballot in his hand. The Miami-Dade Canvassing Board felt sufficiently threatened, and they had had enough. They stopped the recount. And if you're wondering if this was a spontaneous bunch of protesters or some kind of group of Republican operatives trying to steal an election for their team, here's a picture I think can really answer that question.
Yeah, Tom Pyle, Texas GOP official, Gary Malfus, GOP chief counsel, Rory Cooper, GOP congressional committee, Kevin Smith, GOP analyst, Steve Brody, GOP aide from Tennessee, Matt Schlapp, Mr. Rapist himself, okay? Mr. Sexual Favors himself, Matt Schlapp, Bush campaign staff at the time, Roger Moore's GOP aide, Dwayne Gibson, aide from Chuck Royal, GOP, Lena McConkey, GOP's, I guess, assistant, is that?
No recount means no change in votes from Miami-Dade. But surely the Palm Beach County votes could go Gore's way, right? Yeah, they could have, if they had finished the recount. But since Katherine Harris was Secretary of State, she was able to move the Palm Beach County deadline up a day to the Sunday after Thanksgiving.
So the Secretary of State has apparently decided to shut us down with approximately 2 hours perhaps left to go. And that's how she chose to exercise her discretion. We believe there are approximately 800 to 1,000 ballots left to count. So unfortunately, at this time, we have no other choice but then to shut down. The supervisor for elections needs to...
I present to you Trump's legal argument. That's pretty. Seems like, seems like history just does not change.
Hurriedly gather all the paperwork and prepare to file the returns that we have. We certainly don't want to get anything in there at 5:01.
Palm Beach submitted a partial recount, and Katherine Harris gave him the old 2 for flinching and rejected it for being incomplete. Once again, Al Gore would get none of the newly counted votes, and it looked like this whole refusing to count votes in a Democratic election was a real winning strategy for...
Just so you guys understand, Secretary of State of Florida from 1999 to 2002, and then after this, because people were asking, like, what happened? Like, did she go to jail for this? Yeah, dude. She so did not go to jail that then she moved on to become a elected member of the House of Representatives from Florida's 13th Congressional District from 2003 to 2007. So no, They did not throw her in jail. They rewarded her, and she became a United States Congresswoman.
Team Bush.
I hereby declare Governor George W. Bush the winner of Florida's 25 electoral votes for the President of the United States.
But not so fast, Jackson, because Team Gore knows how.
Yes, the recount was going to flip it to Gore, and she moved up the deadline while knowing they wouldn't be able to hit the deadline. So in doing so, she invalidated the recount entirely, handing Bush Florida with a margin of victory of 537 votes and thus the presidency. And for those of you who were too young to remember, despite the fact that George W. Bush is now seen as like a hero by liberal circles because liberals are disgusting in the way that they whitewash war criminals, George W. Bush's administration was significantly more consequential for American domestic policy and American foreign policy, i.e. the entire fucking globe's policy, than Donald Trump. This is why I will never agree with people who say Donald Trump is worse than George W. Bush. He was not. Okay? George W. Bush and America's policy post 9/11 was significantly more damaging and significantly more consequential than anything else. Okay? Yeah, you don't even get Trump without Bush, but you have to understand George W. Bush's administration was perhaps the worst administration of all time.
How to play the hits. They filed yet another lawsuit, and the Florida Supreme Court decided that they weren't going to let a bunch of computers that looked like this and George Bush's two best friends decide who got to be president.
The court shall order a manual recount of all undervotes in any Florida county where such a recount has not yet occurred.
The Florida Supreme Court ordered a hand recount of the entire state because they weren't about to let Florida be the butt of everybody's jokes for the next 24 years. That's right, it's the Supreme Court of the United States. And under the flimsiest of legal pretext, they've decided to take Bush's case. Rather than let Florida complete a legally mandated hand recount of their own votes, the 5 Republican-appointed conservative justices closed ranks and voted 5-4 to stop the count and end the election, officially handing the presidency to the guy who both lost the popular vote and received fewer votes in the deciding state. 5-4, huh? So you do understand democracy. And as if to admit that they shouldn't have stepped in to subvert an election, the 5...
Yeah, good thing that the Supreme Court isn't like slammed in that direction. Oh, wait, the people that worked on this process literally are now in the Supreme Court themselves. Oh my God, it's 6-3 now. Oh my God! The Supreme Court is about to have 3 Bush v. Gore alumni sitting on the bench. Judge Amy Coney Barrett, once confirmed, will be one of 3 Supreme Court justices who assisted the legal team of the then Texas governor, George W. Bush, in the Florida ballot recount battle that came down to a single vote at the Supreme Court. Not only did they have a 5-4 majority at the time, and some of those fucking dipshits are still in the Supreme Court, including but not limited to Clarence Thomas, as you saw, they also literally put people who were directly working with the Bush campaign at the time to do this into the Supreme Court. The court's December 12, 2000 decision cutting off Florida recounts tore apart justices in the nation, and the case hovers in the air today as America approaches the November 3rd presidential election. This was from all the way back in 2020. Other current justices benefited from the decision giving Bush the White House over Vice President Al Gore as they eventually became Bush appointees to the bench. Conversely, a pending judgeship for one of the current members was derailed by Bush v. Gore temporarily. Of the original 9 who decided the case 2 decades ago, only 2 remain, Clarence Thomas and Stephen Breyer. And they were on opposite sides. Following our descriptions of the judges' associations, the 3 who assisted Bush, Chief Justice John Roberts flew to Florida in November 2000 to assist Bush's legal team. He helped prepare the lawyer who presented Bush's case to the Florida State Supreme Court and offered advice throughout. Roberts also faced a singular personal challenge during the 36-day ordeal that extended from November 7th election day to the court's late hour December 12th ruling. Then in private practice, Roberts was preparing to argue before the justices in a separate business case on November 29th, and within days in December, the baby boy he and his wife had planned to adopt was born. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, he was in private practice in 2000 and helped the Bush legal team. He wrote on a 2018 Senate questionnaire that his work related to the recounts in Volusia County, Florida. Amy Covid Barrett herself wrote on the questionnaire she submitted to the Senate on her Supreme Court confirmation review. One significant case on which I provided research and briefing assistance was Bush v. Gore. When you look at the situation presented to you, like in front of you, and you're like, why does shit seem worse every year? Understand that this machine has set forth decisions long before you were born that is marginally making shit worse every single day. This is the long con. Okay? That's it. Just like the Roe v. Wade decision. Endlessly consequential and unimaginably unpopular, the Roe v. Wade decision. Every single person that was appointed under the Trump administration lied and said that this was a super precedent, including but not limited to Amy Covid Barrett. Lied to the American public and lied to Congress. They said they would not overturn it. They said it was too popular. They said there was too much legal precedent to defend it. They said it was a super precedent. What did they do? Lo and behold, once they became Supreme Court justices, they overturned it. That decision did not happen overnight. The Federalist Society wanted to do this for almost 40 years. Okay? 40 fucking years ago, they were like, yeah, this is what we're going to do eventually. I need you to understand that.
Conservative majority Supreme Court ruled for possibly the first and only time that this decision was not precedent. It would only apply in this one case, so let's all just forget about the time a conservative Supreme Court stepped in and stopped an election that was actively counting votes and handed it to the Republican. And there have been some incredible think pieces written about this whole affair, but possibly the best quote comes from the dissenting opinion of Justice John Paul Stevens. Although we may never know with complete certainty the identity of the winner of this year's presidential election, the identity of the loser is perfectly clear. It is the nation's confidence in the judge as an impartial guardian of the rule of law. And that is how the U.S. presidency ended up in George Regular W. Bush's hands in the year 2000. Honestly, it's a pretty depressing story, and you might even be wondering why I decided to cover it. Well, here's the thing. It's a presidential election year once again.
It's really hard not to sound like a conspiracy theorist when we're dealing with moves that are 40 years in the making. I mean, this isn't like a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy in the legal term. Like, they're conspiring to do this. It's not a theory. It's just a reality. These are not things that we are suspecting happen. These are things that were openly being communicated for multiple decades, and we're watching it unfold in front of our eyes. It's like, it's just the reality.
You probably wish it wasn't.
And the reason why I'm going through this process and explaining to you step by step how it has happened in the past and trying to explain to you how worse things have gotten since then is because I want you to understand. I want you to have the tools to analyze what happens tomorrow potentially, okay? That's it. This is a big part of what I do, contrary to what my naysayers might claim I do. This is my job. This is what I am tasked with doing, which is to explain to you historical context as to why certain things are slated to happen, okay? That's the goal here. Hopefully, your takeaway is we must not repeat the mistakes of the past. That's the goal of giving you historical context.
And after hearing me smash through all the ways the 2000 election got absolutely borked by some little brothers and a bunch of the guys from that scene in Wolf of Wall Street, you might even find yourself thinking, what's the point in voting when these dudes can just come in and swipe an election? But here's how I see it. The biggest problem with the 2000 election was that it was too goddamn close. Sure, this kind of thing is exciting as hell.
Is this the dagger?
But this is the election for the President of the United States. And when we're trying to finally double down on the biggest pieces of climate legislation ever, we don't want a buzzer beater. We want to win by 40. We want a blowout. We want to light the scoreboard up so hot it becomes self-aware like in the movie Space.
But you guys understand, like, why I hope this helps you kind of come to terms with why I'm so critical of the Democratic Party's messaging on this stuff whenever they say dumbass shit like, we want a strong Republican Party. Okay? There is nothing that frustrates me more than watching the party that I'm supposed to be in favor of, supposed to be in support of, the party that is supposed to closely align with my values, maybe not with the entirety of it, but like still the party that is supposed to be the counterbalance against like the endless creep towards fascism, openly priming their base to normalizing this kind of shit. Because every single time you hear Nancy Pelosi say things like, we want a strong Republican Party, we want the Republican Party of the past, this is what they're pointing to. This is what the Republican Party of the past did. And the only reason why you say stuff like that is because you either forgot what the Republican Party of the past did, or because you want to effectively prime your base into, hoping and dreaming that there is a different Republican Party out there. Project 2025 doesn't end with defeating Trump. It ends with defeating the whole Republican Party. Exactly. Thank you. That is why my analysis on Project 2025, I've been talking about that for a fucking year plus at this point, has always been Project 2025 is not new. A lot of people focused on it, and it's been an effective way to campaign against the current Republican Party. But you have to understand, Project 2024 and 2026 is the same. Donald Trump was implementing Project 2025. How much do you blame the media for this mess? 2000, I blame them a lot. But even in this year, the media always takes the right-wing framing. It kills me. Yeah, it's never stopped. Medium rare OG, details matter. Bush v. Gore was decided 7-2, not 5-4. 5-4 was on the remedy. Another detail, the attempt was to count undervotes, but not overvotes. Medium rare OG is a Bush v. Gore truther, saying that like, no, Bush definitely won regardless.
Space Jam. But I'm not out here trying to advocate for voting for the climate on vibes alone, baby. So we teamed up with our friends over at Evergreen Action to take a look at what the actual climate stakes of this election are and why you getting yourself registered to vote and then actually going to the polls is 100% worth your time.
All right. So the rest of that is about climate change policy, which, you know, I have I've talked about, but like I wanted to specifically cover the aspect. I wanted to specifically cover this aspect. Okay. Due to such a lib, he is fantastic. Okay. You guys are go support our boy. He's amazing. Climate Town rules. You're so wrong for saying that. I love them. I think he's great. And it's I will not allow any shit talking to take place. Yeah, my bad, dude. He cares about fucking he cares about hoping, he cares about trying to stop anthropogenic climate change. But I know, what a fucking lame ass, dude. You're really fucked up. He does not want the next generation to just like die out the fucking womb. It's really fucking lame of him. Anyway.
To our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, in Pennsylvania with the latest on the Harris campaign. Good morning to you, Mary.
Bro, I don't know if you are Brandon Buckingham. I don't know why the fuck you keep repeating this over and over again. I know this is unrelated, but Brandon Buckingham made a great documentary about the life in southern Lebanon that's being suppressed by the algorithm. Please react to it if you haven't already. Try to bring more attention to the situation. What I don't understand about this is that, like, wasn't that guy fucking chirping about how much of a terrorist I am? Like, the election is tomorrow. I'm kind of surprised that guy literally was like crying about how he's an edgy boy who literally loves Sam Hyde, who is a fucking pedophile Nazi. Okay. But simultaneously, he has been extremely critical of my coverage. Extremely critical of my coverage over Israel-Palestine, which I've always been truly shocked by. Okay. But also, he is, I guess now, I don't know. Didn't he try to chirp at you in person? Yeah, he did. I'm glad that he has arrived at, I guess, a normal position that, like, the Lebanese population is worthy of dignity, and he recognizes their humanity. You know? The red tomato pig with him, yeah.
Good morning, Robin. Well, Kamala Harris is finishing out this
Harris making a final pitch to Michigan voters ahead of the election. Let's take a look.
campaign, crisscrossing this all-important state. She's hoping to turn out every last voter by convincing them that she's the candidate who can turn the page. Overnight, Vice President Kamala Harris making her final pitch to voters in Michigan.
Michigan, I am here to ask for your vote. I am here to ask for your vote.
Eager to end on a positive note, Harris not mentioning her opponent by name, opting to focus less on Donald Trump and more on the kind of president she would be, drawing a sharp contrast.
I pledge to listen to those who will be impacted by the decisions I make. I pledge to listen to experts. And I pledge to listen to people who disagree with me. Because, you see, I don't believe people who disagree with me are the enemy. In fact, I'll give them a seat at the table because that's what strong leaders do.
But in a state with one of the largest Arab and Muslim populations, Harris well aware the war in the Middle East is a crucial issue. In East Lansing, opening her remarks with a pledge to end the conflict and suffering.
This year has been difficult, given the scale of death and destruction in Gaza, and given the civilian casualties and displacement in Lebanon. It is devastating. And as president, I will do everything in my power to end the war in Gaza, to bring home the hostages, end the suffering in Gaza, ensure...
This should have been her starting point and her first message right out the fucking gate, and she inevitably expanded upon this. I'm going to talk about this. I covered this briefly yesterday, and I actually posted about it as well, even though I got fucking context noted by the dumbest individuals of all time. I said, unbelievable. This Palestinian Lebanese victim-centered rhetoric only came after Trump courted Arab voters in Dearborn. For months, we have been screaming that a change in Israel policy/rhetoric is the morally correct and politically sound decision. Now it's likely too late. And a lot of people, I guess, chose not to understand what I was saying, especially because this is the first time that she actually talked about the humanity of Palestinians and the Lebanese from the perspective of them being victims to Israel's actions, and without framing the context around October 7, Hamas, or Israel. She still maintained the position that Israel has a right to defend itself, but that came after. Words and the emphasis that you place on words matter, okay? Especially for someone like Kamala Harris. Now, what is really frustrating about this is that not only did I mention this, but this is the message that she should have come out with already from the jump, not the shit that she did for the past couple of months. And yet, this, in spite of the reality that this was the first time that she said Lebanese and Palestinian people are people and yada, 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 like a victim-centered narrative, a lot of people were like, she's been saying this. You're so fucking dumb. She's been saying this literally the entire time. You're just really dumb. To which I responded, I hate how incredibly stupid most people have become on this website. Politicians know the weight and placement of the words they use. This is the first time she started the convo centering Palestinians and Lebanese people instead of Israel's right to defend itself, October 7, or Hamas. That was my position. And yet, so many people just refused to comprehend what I was saying in this circumstance. And it doesn't fucking matter. Now, ultimately, I mean, she said the same thing weeks ago, verbatim. Once again, people are choosing not to understand what the difference here is. Now, even the likes of Craig Harrington, who I like, who is a research director at Media Matters for America, disagreed with me and said, this is from Kamala Harris's DNC acceptance speech. I don't know why these people think that I wasn't paying close attention to the things that she was saying. Okay? Of course I know exactly what the fuck she was saying. This is from Kamala Harris's DNC acceptance speech. I said, this is one of the first times she's opened the conversation without speaking of Israel's right to defend itself or October 7 first, centering the victims of Israeli violence in the beginning. We all understand word placement is deliberate, right? You are seeing what you want to see. Her statement was about the Arab American community in Michigan specifically. She's been saying this about the situation in Gaza for months, and people have been pretending that she's not been saying it. No, I am saying that this is still too little, but it's also too late. And not only that, but this is the first time, and this speech itself also obviously showcases the reality that she is not immediately coming out of the gate with October 7, Hamas, mass rapes, babies being lit on fire, to contextualize all of the violence that Israel committed in the aftermath of that. So obviously the campaign itself has recognized that there is a difference in messaging. It's just that it's far too fucking late for the campaign to recognize it, and yet liberals still refuse to even to even point out a marked tonal shift. Okay, and it's very frustrating that even like-minded individuals, even like intelligent liberals, alongside the rest of the fucking Twitter population, have completely lost their damn minds. Okay? I don't know why people are openly being confidently wrong on this issue. This shit PMO, the community notice, so garbage. Even the motherfucker says she already said this verbatim, posted a screenshot where she's still centering Israel's right to defend itself. Exactly. Now, you might say, and I actually would agree with this, that even this in and of itself is not enough. Of course it's not enough. Okay? But this should have come first and foremost. This should have come months ago. And then she should have expanded upon that to communicate a separation from the Biden White House. And she didn't do that. But the very fact that she is choosing to do it now, the very fact that she's even marginally changing her communication strategy on this now, 2 days before the election, is shocking. Why don't you block those freaks in your replies? I mean, I would have to block virtually every single person. It's like, I don't have enough fucking time to do that. I also have done that by just simply not going on Twitter when I am not live. I'm more so talking about how frustrating it is to have this fucking conversation with people who refuse to understand the point deliberately. Like, you have to be voluntarily refusing to hear my point in this situation, right? You are seeing what you want to see. Her statement about the Arab American community in Michigan specifically, she has been saying this about the situation in Gaza for months. She hasn't changed her message, bro. What are you hearing? She's saying the exact same thing using different words and is lying. I know. I understand that she is still not interested in actually changing her policy. That's not the point. The point is, this is not only bare minimum, but even the marginal difference in the way that she is communicating this issue came far too late. It's too little and it's too late. Democrats, especially, unlike the Republican Party, care about this stuff. They care about the optics of this stuff. Okay? That's why I expanded on it and said that this is the first time that she is not centering Israel around the conversation. Okay? There is a limited amount of space that I have to talk about these issues on Twitter, but it opens it up to people being voluntarily delusional. Okay? Anyway, you need to make sure you're strategic with your messaging on sensitive topics such as this, like Gaza, Lebanon being genocide. That can't be said in the marketplace of ideas, but then the Dems will run up the top of the hour ad break and elect Trump themselves. Okay, we're not doing top of the hour ad break debates, at least for the duration of the election, but thank you for debating me. You can avoid the no ads by subscribing, even though I'm not running ads, for $6 or for free, and you can support the stream by subscribing. Anyway, great filter event is tomorrow. So pog. Yes, I did cover the Epstein tapes yesterday. Isn't Swam Marcus a libertarian that lived in Thailand? I don't know. I don't care. People are so fucking stupid. And I like that there's enough members in this community that are hate watching currently that this dude's response went from 5.3K likes to 6K likes instantly. Like, welcome to the broadcast, chatters who are in here watching. hoping that they can have something that they can clip out of context and keep crying because they have no interest in the election, nor what happens in Israel, nor what happens in Gaza, and are specifically just here because of their hyperfixation. Anyway, Benign Burger, thank you for the 20 gifted subs. So, if it matters, your first tweet I didn't understand, it was like, she has said these things. Your replies clear it up, saying you meant things without the Israel part. Yeah. You got hate fans, Lamau. I know. They are so incredibly fucking invested. It's like kind of sad, but I mean, I don't know. I guess it is what it is. Someone said you support Grape. Okay, dude. I'm going to fucking ether you out. Like, if you're dumb enough that you're voluntarily fucking bringing, like, very deliberately shit that's clipped out of context, like, you need to be nuked from orbit, okay? Yes, dude. People say unhinged shit. They call me anti-Semite. They call me transphobic. Who the fuck cares? What can I do? There's nothing I can do about it. My haters are unimaginably invested. You are voluntarily doing their bidding when you fucking promote these idiotic fucking takes. Anyway, let's get back to Kamala Harris.
Israel is secure and ensure the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, freedom, security, and self-determination.
The vice president crisscrossing the key battleground state on her last weekend of campaigning, hoping to get out the vote and reach key constituencies like black voters, with stops at churches.
But joy cometh in the morning, and church morning is on its way.
And black-owned businesses.
This is a fight that is not against something as much as it is for something. Right.
In the final sprint, both campaigns trying to broaden their reach, playing ads during NFL games, speaking directly to voters.
Just remember, Kamala and her friends broke it. I'll fix it. Most important election in the history of our country.
He just looks like shit. God damn.
Go and vote.
Now, the baton is in our hands. I pledge to seek common sense solutions to make your life better. And I pledge to be a president for all Americans.
Harris taking a moment to cast her own ballot, too, by mail.
Make sure you fill out your ballot. I did mine. I'm going to put it in the mail.
And making a surprise appearance on Saturday Night Live. Playing the mirror image of actress Maya Rudolph's version of her.
Because what do we always say? Keep Kamala and carry on a lot.
Now Kamala Harris is spending the entire last day of this campaign here in Pennsylvania, the state most likely to tip this race. And she has several events throughout the day, and then it culminates in what is expected to be a massive rally here. And guys, she is leaning on some big names like Katy Perry, Oprah, Lady Gaga, Ricky Martin, The Roots, and others to help get her across the finish line.
Okay, Mary, thanks.
Vice President Kamala Harris will be in.
I think that one of the things that Kamala Harris should have done, like an easy gimme, was to send Bernie Sanders and Tim Walz to Joe Rogan. Instead, they sent fucking John Fetterman, which is, you know, the absolute worst person I can think of to go on a 3-hour broadcast where you have to speak for 3 hours straight. But you know, what the fuck do I know? Every single thing that I have said since the DNC in terms of like what kind of messaging she should lean in and what kind of messaging looks bad. Blueprint, which is a Democratic Party pollster that looks at messaging resilience, okay, has confirmed over and over again. I said from the jump, expanding Medicare, good. Top marks on Blueprint. Expanding price gouging, good. Top marks on Blueprint. I love small businesses. I'm going to do tax cuts for small businesses. Bad. Lowest marks you can possibly get on Blueprint. Okay? A Democratic Party pollster that analyzes the strategies, the communication strategies of certain statements. Okay? Horrible mistakes in terms of like rushing towards Brandon and saying that you are just like Brandon, that you are not going to be different than Joseph Robinette Brandon at all. Horrible, horrible fucking message. Really, really bad marks on Blueprint. As the chair of the BOCC, I was invited again to meet with Kamala Harris as she arrived in North Carolina last week. Every opportunity with her, I've used my time to advocate for Gaza and the West Bank. This time I was surprised, rambling, thread of my thoughts processing. I've been asked why I continue to meet with Kamala Harris, and honestly, it's difficult deciding. I go back and forth every time I'm invited to meet her. Sometimes I go, sometimes I don't. This first time this year, back in February, I was chastised by other political leaders in Durham for wearing a keffiyeh when meeting her. I was told I was causing trouble. That experience, though uncomfortable and stressful, showed me that my presence in these spaces isn't just to have a conversation with the VP. It is also to educate and inform other leaders around me that Gaza is an issue that matters. I do, in certain instances, whenever I talk to like actual DC people, like people that work either directly when I talk to politicians themselves or people that work in their immediate orbit, I'm genuinely shocked at how much of the overarching attitude within DC comes from them being kind of out of touch with different narratives, different realities, and different messages that are resilient. Their only access to this sort of stuff comes from polls, okay? They are only informed after the fact. And even then, they just still, I think, have a lot of older people that are ideologically committed to a certain kind of framework. They're ideologically committed to third way neoliberalism. They're ideologically committed to tacking right. And so they refuse, like the older analysts, the older staffers, and the people who make these communication decisions, I think, refuse to reckon with even the focus tested messages. And obviously the focus groups and the focus tested messages can almost always fucking refuse to look at certain realities. Like that's the reason why you don't hear a lot of like messaging on Gaza, for example, with the exception of like other outside polling, like CARE doing a poll on Muslim voters in America, or things of that nature, right? Polls don't make you send the cops on students. Ideology does. I mean, I think so, but I am shocked at how much of this is not like nefarious and cynical, even though there is a good bit of that nefarious and cynical hard-headedness. So much of that is just specifically because they just don't talk to a person that has a different perspective, and their opinions calcify within the bubble that they're in. I think that's what it is. Oh my God, everyone is saying talk to her. What the fuck is happening? Holy shit, this chat is so brain rotted. There are more Jews than Muslims, and Dems think all of us are concerned more about Israel. I know, it's wrong. There's also no evidence to show that. There's only evidence to show the exact opposite. Like, it's not like there aren't polls on the matter. American Jews have said Israel is their 9th priority out of the top 10 priorities. They are American. They vote as Americans. They are not Israeli, and they are not voting on behalf of Israel. That is the weird reality that a lot of people don't recognize. Okay? It's almost funny when you think about it, when it's like they're doing woke dual loyalty narratives, you know? They're doing dual loyalty narratives, but woke. It's fucking so frustrating. Working with a former congressperson has always shocked me how much they just blindly believe what lobbyists tell them with little skepticism. Yeah. Anyway, a brief summary of how the interactions have gone when I bring up Palestine. To her, February, boiler response that she heard me and appreciated my voice. August, thanked me for my leadership, said we have more work to do. But like I started, this time I was surprised. She immediately remembered me and baby Abdul and took him in her arms. When I started to speak with her, she really zoned in. More than she has in the past. I told her Gaza must be saved. I also shared with her that Aisha and was Taukir's close friend and wife. she and her family deserve justice and haven't received that. She held my hand and looked me in the eyes. I promise you this will be my top priority. I promise you. I know words can be empty. I know she's VP right now. So why did I still vote for her? Because whether you agree with me, she's the only one who can bring an end to the war as president. Ugh. Okay. How to tell a friend to vote for Jill Stein is not the biggest brain idea. I don't know where to even start this subject. Okay. I have never been a pro Jill Steiner. I do not like Jill Stein. I do not like the Green Party. Many people know this already. I've talked about it quite extensively. I understand why people do protest votes, but if you think that you're going to teach the Democratic Party a lesson, let me tell you, you're not. Do whatever you want to do. Could start by saying her VP is transphobic and pro-abortion limits. Yeah, I don't even know enough about like Butch Ware, but I just don't. I am sorry. I cannot trust a party that only remembers that they exist every fucking 4 years. Okay? Like, you can complain and say I'm in the pocket of the Democrats all day, every day. I think it's fucking ridiculous. Okay? Adam Conover made a video about it and made everybody mad, lol.
The problem with third parties. We all want more choices in our political system. I do too. But unfortunately, in the US, we have a winner-take-all political system. In other countries where they have proportional representation, if a third or minor party gets just 5% of the vote, then they get 5% of the seats in the legislature, so they get real power. But in a winner-take-all system, they don't get power. Instead, they just take votes away from the party that they're more closely aligned with and often throw the election to the party they're most opposed to.
The only aspect of this that I don't agree with is that it is up to the Democratic Party to win those votes. Okay? I'm not someone who's going to be like, unless you're voting directly for Trump, unless you're voting directly for the Republican Party in any capacity, I am of the mindset that, and even then, like, it's up to the Democratic Party to win those votes back. Okay? But I will stop you and tell you not to do that. I will urge you not to do that if you're like, oh, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. Having said that, however, my mindset on this, I think, is, I guess, quite controversial in American politics for some weird reason. But I believe that the entire purpose of voting is so that you can extract concessions from the party that you are voting for. That is the underlying basis of democracy. The notion that like these votes are being taken for granted is a silly one. I don't agree with it, and I don't think it's a successful method anyway. Why would you urge me not to vote for Trump? I'm curious, and I have always an open mind. Where do I begin? Donald Trump has greatly accelerated the income and wealth disparity in this country. It's something that I actually think is unconscionable and is one of the major problems that Americans are facing. He did this by offering permanent tax cuts to the top tax bracket, myself included, and also corporations. He also offered minor tax cuts to the working class Americans in an effort to justify the major tax cuts that the corporations of the wealthy were getting at a time when record high profits were happening for them regardless. He did not have to do that, but he did it regardless, and that was his signature legislative accomplishment. Donald Trump also undermined every single federal regulatory agency by directly appointing people who were tasked with destroying said agencies their entire fucking lives. Donald Trump is also unimaginably white nativist in his immigrant agenda, in his rhetoric towards migrants. He's dehumanized migrants actively and deliberately. I find that to be completely unconscionable. He is Hitlerian in his policies, in his advocacy, and also sometimes directly paraphrases Adolf Hitler, like when he said immigrants are poisoning the blood of this nation, or when he said or I guess people in his campaign had said that America should be for Americans at the Madison Square Garden rally, only less than 100 years after the Nazi rally that had taken place in Madison Square Garden, where they channeled similar sentiment. Donald Trump has also, promoted Hitlerian generals, said that he wanted Adolf Hitler's generals, or because he doesn't really understand the history itself, doesn't realize that Hitler's own generals tried to have him assassinated numerous times, but that's besides the point. The fact that he still wants that is fucking ridiculous. Donald Trump does not give a single shit about anyone. He only cares about himself, and he only cares about people who are exactly like him, extremely wealthy. His mass deportation policy will be devastating, is akin to Nazi Germany. Hitler also originally wanted to deport everyone and not, he didn't arrive at the final solution immediately. He originally wanted to do the Madagascar plan for the Jews, which he wanted to just deport them, right? But after years and years of dehumanizing rhetoric and recognizing that the financial calculation benefited just simply killing everyone rather than deporting them, that's how the Holocaust happened. Donald Trump's foreign policy track record is also devastating, with some exceptions. I would say that on North Korea, he was better than the Democratic Party. He was less militant and wanted North Korea and South Korea to come to terms on their own, which I thought was decent. But beyond that, it was, horrifying. Donald Trump threw aside Barack Obama's signature foreign policy accomplishment, the Iran denuclearization agreement. Iran said that they would still follow the Iran denuclearization agreement, which wasn't just simply kept up by the United States of America, but also numerous European partners. Our European partners were still going to the nuclear facilities even after Donald Trump said he was casting aside the Iran denuclearization agreement, and said that Iran was still following the process, because they thought America was not insane enough to do such a thing. Donald Trump responded to that by adding additional sanctions on Iran. Donald Trump also set the stage for October 7 by moving the American embassy to Jerusalem and solidifying Israel's occupation of East Jerusalem. Donald Trump also gave Golan Heights, which is annexed and occupied Syrian territory, to Israel. Donald Trump also did the Abraham Accords, which completely sidestepped Palestinians and wrote out Palestinian emancipation from the equation by simply putting forward on paper the already normalized relations between these Gulf states and MENA states that are American client states for the most part with Israel. And that was obviously endlessly frustrating. Donald Trump's Supreme Court appointments obviously did Roe v. Wade after lying to the American public, saying that they were not going to ever overturn Roe v. Wade because it was a super precedent. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot. Donald Trump's climate change policies were so unimaginably bad that even American industry leaders had to say, we can't have this level of carbon emissions. It's actually going to destabilize the planet. Thanks for some insights and actually explaining some things. I figured I'd get dehumanized for asking this question. Wait, what? Why? You said you have an open mind. Why would I dehumanize you? What the fuck? Donald Trump's far-right Supreme Court has overturned the Chevron deference, greatly reducing the power of the federal regulatory agencies. There are a million different things that the Trump administration did. Donald Trump's overall attitudes about, I think, dangerous misinformation spreading is genuinely terrifying for the future of this country. He has greatly destabilized this nation. Even on the rhetorical front, Donald Trump has also defended Nazis marching through the streets, where he very famously once said after the Charlottesville Nazi rally that there were very fine people on both sides. There were no fine people on one side of the equation. The Nazis did not have very fine people on their ranks. That was ridiculous. Donald Trump has wined and dined direct neo-Nazis like Nicholas Fuentes, just like everyone's favorite debate lord, Destiny himself. Donald Trump has openly kept neo-Nazis with direct ties to former Nazi groups like Sebastian Gorka in his cabinet, in his administration. Yeah, just a bad guy overall. Donald Trump utilized the marshals to assassinate someone who had killed a neo-Nazi in Portland, and then openly fantasized and openly took credit for the assassination. What else? Why is this race so close, given what you just said about Trump's failings? I mean, so much. Yeah. That's another one. That's a really good one, actually, that I keep forgetting to mention. There were a shit ton of domestic white supremacist, white nationalist acts of terror under the Trump administration due to the fact that Donald Trump was utilizing the bully pulpit to justify and sometimes beef up and give confidence to these neo-Nazis, so much so that they demonstrated openly in Charlottesville in the Unite the Right rally, where they didn't even fear political repercussions. So much so that they fucking unmasked themselves deliberately. Donald Trump greatly accelerated drone strikes, even though he claimed to be a peaceful dove. On the domestic agenda, Donald Trump really revitalized the American Nazi movement that had remained nascent for quite some time. Gave them the confidence to basically operate in broad daylight, especially because Donald Trump's policies were so closely aligned with the neo-Nazi movement in the United States of America. So there's a lot of stuff that he did. I mean, his misinformation during COVID was pretty damaging. Probably killed a shit ton of his own supporters, honestly. And this is before we even get to January 6th. I mean, I do consider January 6th to be a very funny moment in American history, but like, if they were better organized, for example, that would not have been so funny. Luckily, it was all, diabetic HVAC business owners that were trying to climb over the fucking wall of the Capitol, and it didn't really go anywhere, but that doesn't change the reality that he still attempted to overturn the democratic results of an election that he lost. That was fucking insane. He also had a false elector ballot swap initiative that he was also working on the side. Things that he is supposed to be, in court over, in federal court over, which of course, they pushed that back. Part of the reason why they were able to push that back is because Donald Trump's own Supreme Court, with its 6-3 right-wing majority, decided that the president actually has presidential immunity over presidential acts, which created an unnecessary additional hurdle, an unnecessary legal hurdle that must be cleared if you are going to prosecute a fucking former president. This in and of itself is really fucking silly, because the determination of whether something constitutes a presidential act or one that was conducted as a civilian with the interest as like a private American citizen is also left up to the Supreme Court. They did that specifically so they could push back the federal prosecution beyond the election. Anyway, I already mentioned the Abraham Accords. He also flirted with Putin. Yeah, that stuff is neither here nor there. That's like he's done so much awful shit. Like, I don't think personally Donald Trump is anti-NATO in the way that he presented himself. I think that stuff is like, that stuff is silly. If he was so incredibly anti-NATO, then I don't think that the Biden administration would have continued some of the demands that he implemented, as far as like demanding that our NATO partners put more in to their own defenses, for example. Donald Trump never actually pulled out of Afghanistan despite claiming to be a peaceful dove. He actually secured an Afghan withdrawal agreement, sidestepping the puppet administration of the Afghan government and directly speaking to the Taliban leadership, which he released out of prison, by the way, which wouldn't necessarily be a problem if he had continued along the Afghan withdrawal, which he never actually demonstrated political courage to do. Joe Biden actually did demonstrate political courage and withdrew out of Afghanistan. And then Donald Trump used that withdrawal to fucking attack him over and over again. Yeah. Assassinating a foreign general, Qasem Soleimani, on foreign soil in Iraq was also obviously a major escalation against Iran. Very dangerous escalation, if I might add. But that's neither here nor there. I feel like the Biden administration letting Israel loose upon the entire region has been an even more dangerous escalation. So I am genuinely fearful about this. But I do believe that there will be some unrest tomorrow because of the way that the Republican Party now operates, because of the way that Donald Trump has basically geared his base into believing that if he loses, or if it even seems like he's losing, then the election is stolen.